Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Rudrakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Rudrakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Kuntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you make sure that all the green microphones are switched off?
All right, they have all the green ones. Are there any green ones out there? Make sure there are. All right, just give me a second here. There's no verse. You're back to prose. Okay. Huh? Prose and cons. Just prose. Now, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare the. It's the disappearance of Ishvara Puri, but we don't have the songs set out, so I'm just going to read. Okay. Today's the disappearance day of Ishvara Puri, who took the position of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. He was a glorious disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So we'll read a little bit about him first. Forgive my voice, it's still a little bit raw, but we'll manage. Receiving the seed of Krishna prema from Madhavendra Puri, Sri Ishvara Puri became the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Madhavendra Puri couldn't move at the end of his life. So doing all humble services, Ishvara Puri even cleaned up his stool and urine. Ishvara Puri helped his guru to remember Sri Krishna by always chanting Hare Krishna and telling Radha Krishna's pastimes. Pleasing Madhavendra Puri by these menial acts, Ishvara Puri received the treasure of Krishna prema from his spiritual master. Sri Ishvara Puri again showed exemplary humility, the ornament of a true Vaishnava, when he first met Sri Advaita Acharya. Finding Advaita Prabhu busy serving his deity, Ishvara Puri sat down patiently and shyly. Although he was a Vaishnava sannyasi, Ishvara Puri introduced himself with, "I am a Shudra of the lowest class." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Guru of the whole universe, honored Ishvara Puri by taking initiation from him. One day, Ishvara Puri came to Lord Chaitanya's house. The Lord personally cooked and lovingly served his spiritual master. After prasadam, Lord Chaitanya rubbed sandalwood paste on Ishvara Puri and offered a fragrant flower garland. By his own example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed how to properly worship and serve the Guru Parampara. Once, while passing through Sri Ishvara Puri's birthplace, Lord Gauranga became filled with rapture. Taking some dust, the Lord said, "This dust is my life and soul." Ishvara Puri Samadhi stands in the 64 Samadhis area. Shri Ishvara Puri ki jai. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatrittama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of February, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are on Canto 5, The Creative Impetus. Chapter 13, further talks between King Rahugana and Jada. Text number 24. Whoops, okay. There's no verse because it's prose again. And will be for some time. So I'll just chant it myself. Sri Shuka Uvacha Ityevam Uttara Mata Savai Brahmashi Sutaha Sindhu Pataya Atma Satatvam Vaganayatah Paranubhava Padmakanu Kataya Padisha Rahugana Sankaranam Abhivandita Charana Apurnarnava Ivi Nibrita Kadanorm Yashayo Daranim Imam Vichachara. Translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king," now he's speaking to King Parikshit, of course, "My dear king, O son of Mother Uttara, there were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jada due to his being insulted by King Rahugana, who made him carry his palanquin. But Jada neglected this, and his heart again became calm and quiet like an ocean. Although King Rahugana had insulted him, he was a great Paramahamsa. Jada was a great Paramahamsa. Being a Vaishnava, he was naturally very kind-hearted, and he therefore told the king about the constitutional position of the soul. He then forgot the insult, Jada then forgot the insult because King Rahugana pitifully begged pardon at his lotus feet. After this, Jada began to wander all over the earth just as before." Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21, Lord Kapila Dev describes the symptoms of great personalities. Titikshava karunika suridaksa badehinam. A saintly devotee is certainly very tolerant. He is the friend of all living entities,
and he does not create enemies within the world. A pure devotee has all the qualities of a sadhu. Jada Bharata is an example of this. Due to the material body, his senses were certainly agitated when he was insulted by King Rahugana. But later, due to the king's humble submission, Jada Bharata excused him. It is the duty of everyone desiring to return to Godhead to become submissive like King Rahugana and beg pardon of Vaishnavas one may have offended. Vaishnavas are generally very kind-hearted. Therefore, if one immediately submits himself at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, one is immediately cleared of offensive reactions. If one does not do so, the reactions will remain and the results will not be very palatable. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnanandjana Salakya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is the final verse in which we hear about King Rahugana and Jada Bharata. There's one more verse describing the king's next activities after that. But then we're going to go into the final discussion of the forest of enjoyment, in which Shukadev explains to Parikshit all of the intricacies of the allegory that was described. But here, the discussion of the verse, or the passage, is about Jada Bharata's character, and the fact that although he was disturbed by being insulted by the king, you may remember the past time he was drafted into carrying this palanquin with the king on it, and he hadn't spoken really. He's known as Jada Bharata because he didn't speak and therefore seemed to be dumb in both sets of the meanings of the word. Dumb can mean they can't speak, and it can mean that you're not too smart. Because why did he do that? Who remembers why that he took that role of not speaking? Yeah, he had a family, and they were not necessarily devotees and so forth, and so he would get entangled in the relationships and hear all kinds of things. So, and he remembered what happened the previous birth, how he got entangled with a fawn, a baby deer. Didn't they make a movie out of that, Bambi, long ago? Who doesn't love Bambi? You know, yeah. The whole idea was to just, draw you into affection for the baby deer. So he became attracted to this deer. He naturally wanted to help any soft-hearted Vaishnava. He had been practicing alone and meditation on Krishna. He had reached up to the Bhava platform. He was sitting in, what was the name of the ashram in the Himalayas? Pula ashram. And there was suddenly his meditation was broken by the roar of a lion. He opens his eyes, and there in a nearby stream, a deer was running to escape. A pregnant deer was running to escape this lion coming after her. And it jumped into this little stream, and apparently lions and tigers, they don't swim, so it stopped. And the deer somehow got across to the other side, and immediately gave birth. The fawn was there, but the terror of the thing and the exertion, the deer died. So now this fawn is without a mother. And what to do? The fawn looks around and sees Jada Bharata with those big deer eyes, doe eyes. And there was no possibility of him not responding to that. So he became the surrogate mother for this deer, and actually there was a tremendous bond. So then when he sits to meditate, the deer is nibbling at his ears. It's time for feeding. Or the deer's not there, and he's worried what's happened to the deer. Maybe he got, So he was completely distracted. He lost his concentration on Krishna. And then when he passed away, he was thinking of the deer, so he became a deer. But because of his advancement, he could remember. So even as a deer, he didn't get entangled with the other deer. He just hung out near an ashram where devotees were hearing and chanting. And then when he left that body, he became in a Brahmin family. He was born in a Brahmin family. But he pretended to be, that he couldn't speak and that he wasn't too bright. So anyway, you know the pastime. And eventually he just started wandering. And he had a very strong body, and so he was drafted into this palanquin carrying thing. And he hadn't spoken, really. But then when Rahugana started sarcastic, remember, at first he was very sarcastic, is it too difficult for you? You can't carry it, this, whatever he was saying. And then, so he thought that would do the trick, and he kept putting him back, and then he just kept doing the whole thing. But you imagine if you're riding on a palanquin, and one of the members of the four, say, is like moving this way and that way, and avoiding the little ants and bugs that are on the ground. It's not going to be a good ride. So the Rahugana then started to directly chastise him, and Jada spoke up. He said, "You're not a king, and I'm not a palanquin carrier." And he gave him basic information about the soul. And suddenly suddenly Rahugana realized this is a great soul. And he was a pious king. He wasn't a demon. So he gets off, he offers obeisances and like that. But apparently what had moved Jada to speak, at least partially, was because he was there were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jada. Due to his being insulted, and because, as explained in the purport, he had a material body. It's kind of built in. It's just built in. But because he was a great sadhu, a soul, a devotee, and because Rahugana was so submissive and humble after he realized and he heard very submissively the instructions of Jada, he became very peaceful. It just passed like a wave in his calm heart. So this is instructive for that. Prabhupada, he cites Srimad Bhagavatam, the 25th chapter, where Kapila Dev starts his instructions to his mother. And many of you have heard me refer to this Sadhu Sangashtaka. There happen to be 8 verses in which Kapila Dev gives, this is practically the first instruction to his mother. So they're very instructive for us also, obviously. And he starts out, Prasangam madanam pasham atmanak kavayo vidhu ta eva sadhashukato mokshadvaram pavatam. That those who are intelligent, they understand that the powerful attachments that one has that bind one to this world, prasangam, there's sangha and there's prasangam. That's this prefix pra, as Prabhupada would point out, prakrishna rupena. You like to get the Sanskrit, that it means to intensify. And therefore, sangha is attachment. Prasanga is great attachment, or great affection, great like that. So great affection, great attachment we have for all the things of this world are like ropes. Ajanam pasham, very strong ropes. That's what ajanam pasham. Atmana, so the soul, by which the soul is bound birth after birth to take body and try to fulfill these desires, which they never can do. Atmana kavayo vadu, the intelligent souls, they know that same attachment has to be redirected toward sadhus. And this opens up the doors to liberation. So the very nice. Then the next question, if you're listening intently, all right, where do I find the sadhus? What are their qualities? So for 3 verses, he gives a description of the sadhus. And the Prabhupada cites the first one, famous verse, Titikshava Karunika Sudidak Sarva Dehinam. And he actually explains the whole verse. This is the first 2 lines. Ajata Shatavakshanta Sadhavak Sadhabhushana. Sadhabhushana means the ornaments of a sadhu begins with this tolerance. Now you may recall in the Bhagavad Gita that when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna and starts his instructions, they're like the 3rd verse is about tolerance. Matra sparshatha kondeya, shito hasakadukasha. Because even if one is a greatly realized soul, still when your beloved associate like Narottam Das, he was lamenting so much when his dear associate was disappeared. That's what that Yanila song is about. Of course, he laments not only as a dear friend, but also where did Lord Chaitanya go and so forth, the Srinivasacharya. But naturally, there is so much disappointment, this emptiness in the heart. And so Krishna is understanding that Arjuna, if he takes up his bow and he starts fighting again and he is responsible for the death of some of his dear ones like Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya, that this will be tremendously painful. But he has to tolerate that. Yamina Vadayante Purusham Purushashaba Samadukha Sukham Dhiram Somitadvaya Kalpate. It's interesting that this word dhira appears both in that verse and in that 213, that someone who is dhira, when he witnesses someone die, even if he's very dear, he doesn't become disturbed, understanding this is, he's getting another body. The death is really just the death of the body, not of the soul or the self. So, this titikshava, Krishna uses the same word. One has to tolerate heat and cold, pleasure and pain. They come and they go, you know. And if one can do that, then he becomes eligible for liberation. Otherwise, if you can't get control of your mind and senses, then you're going to be whipped around by all of these attachments and repulsions. There's two sides to material entanglement. So these qualities are also very important for us to know, because they're really the qualities that a preacher has to have. Someone who is encountering the opposition and all of the things that happen when one tries to spread Krishna consciousness. So, Titikshava Karana Sudadaksava Dehinam. He is very tolerant and very merciful. As the Sikarunika, just like Prahlad Maharaj. He himself was in bliss, just meditating and chanting the glories of Lord Nrsimhadev and Krishna. But he was lameshochet tovimukachet as Indriyata Maya Sakaya Banamudvatovimuhan. But I am lamenting. Why are you lamenting? You remember Ramchandra, was it not Ramchandra Puri? Who was the other disciple of Ishvara Puri who was chastising? Yeah. That he didn't understand the moods of Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri has this famous verse, in the mood of separation, and Radharani is chanting in Vrindavan for Krishna's in Mathura. I means alas, Adina Dayal Nata, your heart is melting for those who are most wretched and forlorn. Oh my Lord, Nata, hey, when will I see you again? Mathura Nata, she defined, he's in Mathura, she's in Vrindavan. Kadavalokya say, when shall I see you again? Due to my not seeing you, my heart has become broken. What shall I do now? So this is Madhavendra Puri's famous verse. He was hearing and chanting that at the end of his manifestation. And Ishvara Puri was, of course, as described here, was doing all kinds. We heard about in his little biography, was doing all kinds of menial services and helping him. But Ramchandra Puri, he chastised his guru. You don't do that. That's suicide. So what do you should be Brahmabhuta Prasanatma. You should be very joyful and in bliss. What is all this lamentation and crying? Get away from me. If I see your face, I don't know what's going to happen to me when I leave my body. So he was rejected by Ishvara Puri. Yeah. I will not reach the goal of my life if I die seeing your face. So then his creeper of devotion was completely destroyed by that. And he became a critic. He would search out. He became a critic of Lord Chaitanya himself. He went to Puri and he would invite the devotees to take prasadam. And when they take some more, he said, now I've seen the followers of Lord Chaitanya, they eat too much. This is his mood. You can imagine. So, but Ishvara Puri was, of course, different than that. He got all the blessings, as we heard, in the love of God, and he acted as a spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. So, Titikshava Karunika Suridaksavadehinam. Tolerant, compassionate, the friend of all living entities. And not even just human beings, but Ajata Shatrava. Therefore, one never has enmity toward anyone else. This is what it means to not have an enemy. It's a little peculiar because in English, if he has no enemy, it means no one hates you either. But no, you may develop enemies. Someone has enmity toward you, but you don't have any enmity toward them. Just like Prahlad. Prahlad never hated his father. And when his father was finally killed by Nrsingadev, Lord Nrsingadev, Lord Nrsingadev asked him, please accept some boon. And Prahlad rejected. My dear Lord, don't tempt me. I was born in a family of demons, and we're prone to become greedy. I'm not doing business. I'm not a vanik, a businessman. I don't want anything from you. But if you want to give me a boon, there's two actually. The most famous one is that he asked that his father be forgiven. And don't worry, what is it, 12 generations before and after, they will all be delivered. And we saw that with, of course, Bali Maharaj. He was exalted, he became Mahajan, but he was also attacking the demigods, but then he, gave the donation to Vamanadev. But even with Banasura was also a descendant of Prahlad. And he required quite a bit of chastisement. He had 1,000 arms. He lost 996 of them. Krishna cut them all off, and there was a battle. You read that chapter. But aside from that, so these qualities that Kapila Dev is mentioning, you'll see them in all the great devotees. But it's interesting. This is the first verse of description of the sadhus. But then, how do you get that way? He doesn't mention devotional service. Ajata Sadhu Sadhabhushan, these are the ornaments of a sadhu. And Prabhupada also explains one of those words, I think sadhava means that he follows the scripture, the shastra. So then the next verse, Mayananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham matkati chakta savanam chakta swajana bandhava. So now the first line is, this is how the sadhu becomes a sadhu. Undeviating devotional service unto me, says Lord Kapila Dev. Maya ananyena. Ananyena means without any deviation. Bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham, with great determination. And he shows that determination in the second half of the verse. Matkate tyakta karmani. He'll give up any activity for my sake. There's two things for any discipline, any sadhana. The do's and the don'ts, right? Bhadran Ramanuja's famous verse about the do-nots. When he first came, Father, we have many do-nots. Oh, they have donuts too, No, do-nots. So do-nots and do's, the four regular principles of obvious do-nots, and so many do's. Chant 16 rounds that we hearing in the morning. We had that reading, so important. And many other do-nots and do's. Okay. So, matkate Chakta karmanas. For my sake, they'll give up any activity that there's so much attached to. And even if there are impediments, give up relation to his friends and family. Chakta swajana bandhava. And then what else do we do? Marashriya kata mrishta shinvanti katayanti cha. Marashriya has two meanings. It can mean obviously one who's taken shelter of me, or it can mean the kata, the talks that are taken shelter, in other words, related to me. Kata mrishta, which are very sweet to hear. They hear them and they chant them in association with devotees. And because of that, tapanta vibhadastapa naita madgata cetasa, their mind is absorbed in me, madgata cetasa, and they don't suffer so much from the miseries of this world. Tapanti vibhadastapa naitan madgata cetasa. So how do we see that? Prahlad, obviously. Prahlad Maharaj was tormented by his father, but he wasn't feeling agony and pain and screaming and crying, no. He was protected because of his absolute 100% absorption in remembering Krishna. He's the Mahajan, or he's the Acharya, exemplar of remembrance, of meditation. Total absorption. So his father tried to kill him in so many different ways, he couldn't even injure him or disturb his mind. So this is a great strength of the Vaishnava. And then he goes on, and he says, my dear mother, you have to search out such sadhus, and associate with them. Taisha sadhu, I forget the Sanskrit to this one, but he says, sarva sangha vivarjita, who are free completely of material desires. Taisha sadhu shukato, sangha dosha harahite. And then by the association with them, you will get free of all of the faults that have been accrued due to bad association. And probably, I immediately thought of the verse in the 15th chapter, where probably the process of surrender, after the description of the banyan tree. Right? It's so entangling. We're all entangled in this upside down banyan tree, the reflection of the spiritual world. And we try to go here, this branch, that branch, but that will never get out that way. You stay entangled forever. You have to cut it down. Cut down the banyan tree with the sword of detachment. Right. Asanga shastrena dvidena chitpa. But that's not the end of it. Then you have to search out that person from whom everything has come. In other words, then you have to cement your relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's when this verse comes, how to surrender. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. Vinavita kama dvandva vimukta sukadukka sangha gachanchamuda padamamveyang tat. So nirmana moha, I'm going to go through this whole verse, but it's very instructive. Being free from false pride, the illusion of false pride, and having conquered all of the bad results of previous bad association, Chitta Sangha Dosha. Well, that's explained in the verse by Kapila Dev. By finding the sadhus and surrendering to them and practicing devotional service, you can conquer all of your reactions. We all have this big background of sinful reactions and pious reactions. They're also all binding us to this world. So they have to be conquered and nullified and eradicated. We can't do it ourselves. Krishna will do it if we surrender. What is that line in the Govinda prayers? Karmani niyadahati kincha the bhakti bhajan. That all the way from Indra down to the Indra Gopa germ, everyone is bound by these reactions, good and bad, in the material world. But for one who is worshipping Lord Krishna, heart and soul and everything, karmani, this karma, good and bad, karmani nirdahati kintuta bhakti bhaja, is completely burned. They're like seeds. You don't know they're there, but eventually when the time is ripe, they fructify. And they fructify in attachments, and they fructify in qualities and things that happen to you and all these things. But they're all burned up by the process of intense, pure devotional service. This is, making us eligible to go back to Godhead. So these are the qualities of the sadhu. And then the next verse is the most famous, which we can all chant together. Those who know it. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayana katha tadjoshanada shabhavarga vartmani shraddharati bhakti anukramishati. Step by step. The last slide. So he says, Satam prasangan. Here we're back to the word prasanga. But not prasangam of your attachments which are keeping you bound, but intense, meaningful association with the sadhus. Satam sadhus. Mama virya sambido. What's going to happen? You're going to hear glorification of my powerful activities. This is Kapila Dev speaking. Mama virya sambido. Bhavanti rit karna rasayana, which is like a life-giving elixir that pleases the mind and the ears. It's not a bitter medicine. It's a very joyful medicine. It's like a beautiful kirtan. Everyone's playing the percussions in time. A wonderful singer with real bhakti. Where's the downside? It's not like a great austerity. Oh, I got to be. You're attracted to it. And then the prasadam. This is the basic principle of preaching. A lot of kirtan and then wonderful Krishna prasadam. And it attracts anyone's mind. So, satam mama virya sambhavanti rit karna rasayana kata is like a life-giving elixir, very sweet, beautiful for the heart and for the ear. Tadjoshanat ashu abhavarga vartmani. So this is the Apavarga Vartmani. This is the path of liberation, of getting free from. But that's not the goal. That's kind of the byproduct. But still, it's very important to aspire for that. One employs this process of associating with devotees and hearing and chanting about Krishna and Krishna Katha. That's what he's talking about. One develops these three things. It nourishes Shraddha, Rati, and Bhakti, step by step. Faith. Everything that we do in Krishna consciousness is founded on faith. Why does it have to be faith? Because it's all so spiritual, beyond our ability to really understand or even perceive by our mind and senses. So there has to be faith. That's why the Krishna manifests as the holy name, as the deities, but most importantly as the sadhus, as pure devotees, who by their very nature, by their life, by their qualities, but to speak of their words, they can plant that seed of faith. This was Prabhupada's one of his greatest gifts to us, the first gift. By his very presence, he had to be there personally. The books are invaluable, but the books, along with the person who is embodying the books, can transform anyone's life who's somewhat receptive. And that's how Prabhupada started the movement, grew the movement, and he created others who could also plant that seed of faith. So therefore, our duty is not only to do our duties in Krishna consciousness, but also to become advanced so that we are agents who can also plant faith in others. And faith so that they'll take a book, so that they'll become interested, so that they'll come around and take up Krishna consciousness. So that's the preliminary phase. That's the adar shraddha, preliminary respect and interest that Prabhupada talks about. So, and then he goes on, I might as well finish this. There's two more verses, and he says, Asevayayam prakate gunana, bhaktim pare, no. Bhaktya puman jata viraga indriya drishta shrutarman vachananu chintaya chitto yogi yukto yatishyate vijabhiya yoga margai. Sorry, some of the words are missing. So he says, by this process of bhakti, puman jata viraga indriya, very important, it generates vairagya. It generates detachment from all those things that we were attached to that are keeping us bound here. So, Bhaktyapaman jata viraga indriya drishta shrutan. Not only those things that we have seen, that we can immediately perceive, but the things we hear about. This refers to going to the heavenly planets. Many people will get entangled in that. Yes, I'm going to perform this sacrifice and this austerity and so forth, but then I'll go to the heavenly planets. This is the karma kanda section. You see, you're still entangled. Your attachment has gone to more refined pleasure, but that's not Goloka Vrindavan. So drishtasha madrachananu chintaya, by thinking of absorbing yourself in my activities, Krishna Lila, Krishna's pastimes, his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. These are the objects of our absorption. Should be beginning with the name. The one follows naturally from each one. So this is in this way controlling the mind. This is the Rijabhiya Yoga Marga. This is the easiest form of yoga. This is what? Coming together, sitting, glorifying Krishna. The essence of it is Sankirtan. I hear, you chant, I hear. We're enlivening each other by chanting Krishna's name. This is Lord Chaitanya's great revolutionary process. No one is barred, no matter how impure you are, whatever family, socioeconomic, it doesn't matter. You see? Just come and chant. And chant and chant and chant, and then take a little rest, and take prasadam. And then start again, chanting. So they used to go out. You hear about these kirtans in the early days. Yeah, went to Greenwich Village, and then we got home at 2 in the morning. Got back to the temple at 2 in the morning. They didn't go to Mangalarti. There was no Mangalarti at that time. But so much chanting, and that's where so much purification takes place. So then the last verse describes how asevayayam pakadaya gunanam ganena yogena sadribhitena yogena mayapita yasa bhaktyam mam pratyadatmadihas vurunde. So he says there that thus not serving, not associated with the modes of nature, asevayayam prakati gunanam gyanena yogena vijrimbhitena, by the knowledge and the yogic practice that develops in this way. And then offering everything to me in yoga, one attains me at the end. This is Kapila Devi. He's promising you go back to God in this way. So it's very instructive. Those are the 8 verses of the Sadhu Sangashika, text 325-21 through 27. You can check it out. And Prabhupada's purpose are, of course, wonderful. So this is, this kind of understanding is present throughout. You'll find like all the Mahajans, they're manifesting these same qualities, and they're all sadhus, obviously. So we want to become sadhus. Why not? That's the whole wonderment about Krishna consciousness, that whoever you were, you kind of, it's a different identity. That's why initiation, you get a new name, you have a different, and you don't identify with your previous self anymore. We're not these bodies. We're spirit souls. And when we do what spirit souls are meant to do in order to purify our consciousness, purify our existence, then we can also acquire these wonderful qualities and become more and more absorbed in Krishna. And the pleasure of Krishna consciousness, because after all, I mean, the ultimate goal is to decrease the suffering down to nil, and increase the happiness, the pleasure, up to infinity. Now, on the material plane, you can't do that. We're trying to do it, but it's impossible, because we're out of it's like a fish out of water. No matter what you give the fish, he won't be happy until you throw him back in the water. So we're far away from our home back to Godhead, the spiritual atmosphere of Vaikuntha, Goloka, Vrindavan. But because we've forgotten, we turned away from Krishna, made that fatal mistake. We became absorbed in the material energy. And therefore, we're trying to achieve what's unachievable on the material plane. And this is the great fallacy of material life. We need training. We need to hear, we need to understand the philosophy and the practice. We need to practice it. And we can also experiencing these things. And this whole section here, Bharata, becoming a deer, everything is pertinent to us. Don't let yourself get diverted by some material attraction. This is endemic. I mean, how many disciples did Prabhupada have? Almost 5,000. But there's, to come through and not deviate and fall away is not so. It turns out to be fairly rare. It's certainly, I don't know how many are active in the movement now, but it's, they haven't all gotten back to Godhead. I mean, some have, sure, and I'm not denying it. But we've seen that Maya is very tricky. She'll give you an allurement that seems just like another aspect of Krishna consciousness. Preaching, I was out preaching. To 1 in the morning, Prabhu, these people were really interested, Well, then you miss Mangal Artik and the whole morning program, right? Yeah, but I was preaching, But you can get into very bad habits if you're not really following strictly. So that's the whole lesson with King Bharat. He was already in Bhava stage, but he was alone. This is the problem. Our strength is in association. That's the whole idea. And because he was alone, even though he was so advanced, he became attracted to this deer. I mean, he fell in love with the deer. Deer was like a child. Let's put it that way. Very, very powerful attachment. So it's a warning to us. But also this Jada Bhart's, explanation here, the forest of enjoyment, and we're going to hear the details of it in the next chapter. All of the intricacies and the meanings of all of the allegorical things. And so it's why is the Bhagavatam spending so much time on this? Because we need it. We need this to defend against the tricky allurements of Maya, even within the realm of devotional service. And it's this fifth canto. It's unique. I mean, all the cantos are unique, but the frequent time in which we go into prose, we had that also somewhat in the fourth canto. You remember that? But it means that there's a lot of information we're going to get out, and we're not it's not going to just be a verse. Verses are all great, and that's most of it. But there's a kind of a like whole paragraphs of information that we need to get to you, quickly. This touches on one point also, because you may come across this. You'll hear that there's 18,000 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Which is pretty a lot. The Bhagavad Gita is only 700. It has the essence, right? Expanded. And I remember working on the Bhagavatam with Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, and when we finally finished in 88 or 89, they were, the books got printed. And then the devotees would go, okay, let's see where the 18,000 verses are, because you can't count them. There's chapters, and there were a lot fewer. What happened? There's only maybe 13,000 verses, or 14. I forget what it was. What happened? So we we had to talk to Gopi Pranadhana. Well, what it is this: when you read the statement, they're gruntas. There are 18,000 gruntas. Now, Prabhupada translates as verses, and that's mostly what it is. You find a grunta is 32 syllables. Those are all the verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Not all of them, but the vast majority. There's also another longer, like Najayate Mete Bhagavat. So when you get to these prose passages, it counts as one number here in the chapter, right? But there may be like 10 gruntas or more. You see how you fall behind. So in this way, it adds up to 13,000. Gruntas. You look it up in a dictionary, you'll find. So that just in case you're wondering about that. Okay. Any comments or questions?
Dravida Prabhu?
Yes. Hold on one second, Vijay. I'm going to see if someone comes up with a local question.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
Okay. We have the other Vijay. He's going to make a comment.
You said he asked for 2 boons, Prahlad Maharaj.
Yes. I forgot. Yeah.
What was the other one?
Oh boy, my brain doesn't work as well as it used to. The first one, actually, you know it, right? You know the Sanskrit? He asked that, well, okay, my Lord.
No.
How's this go? Yeah. I'll pick it up. That you have to review them. If you review these verses gradually, they become, part of you. No. No, it's a small verse. He said, my dear Lord, if you really want to give me an attractive boon, please let material desires never take root in my heart. That's the first one. He asked that. And then later he asked for the deliverance of his father. You see? And I forget Nishingadev's answer, but he says, there'll never be any material desire in your heart. But I'll find the passage and look it up for you. So that's a great prayer. We can all pray like that. My dear Lord Krishna, please let material desires, please let all the material desires I have be eradicated, and let them never reappear in my heart. Yeah. The prayers in the Bhagavatam, there's so many. Some of them are beyond us, but many of them we can incorporate. The prayers of Queen Kunti, Twahime Ananivishaya Manti Madhapate Sakrit. Anyone can pray like this to Giridhari. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. Why not? Maharaj?
I was asked by some devotees a couple questions. I would like to know your opinion. One question. Sometimes the Ekadashi they send the story of the Ekadashi, and sometimes karma kandiya things are there. Some material benefit. So and yesterday's Ekadashi. In the story, Krishna say that whoever follows the Ekadashi get the benefit of performing a horse sacrifice, the merit of a horse sacrifice. So the question is, what is the merit or benefit of horse sacrifice? What is that? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not, all I know is that it doesn't, if I recall correctly, it doesn't help you directly to develop love for Krishna. It's not like we're missing out if we're not pouring horse sacrifices.
No. But there's a material benefit.
Material benefit,
But
yeah.
what is the material benefit?
I don't know.
Maybe elevation to
Heavenly
heavenly planet.
planet, yeah.
Whatever. The other question is, why Indra Dev and Surya Dev, and the sun god and Indra, disguise themselves as Gautama to seduce his wife? Why they did that? Being such a great demigods, they were attracted to somebody else's wife, and they had children with her.
Yeah.
Although she was married to somebody else.
Well, as far as Indradev goes, he is famous for losing it.
Yeah.
Losing his control. And I mean, it's so amazing about Indra that, of course, we know the pastime of Govardhan Hill, very famous, how just think about it a minute. He was insulted. He was, his sacrifice was stopped, but so many others were performing sacrifices. Not that he's going to, be poverty-stricken or anything, but he was so insulted. It's a perfect example here because he did not come back to a peaceful situation. He lost it so much that he's ready to annihilate the whole community there, to drown everybody. The pastime. The water was falling. They couldn't see the difference between low and high land. That means that everything was filling up with water. You can imagine the danger there. And of course, Krishna, took away his pride by lifting the hill. That's a happy ending. But he's a devotee, but he's not a pure devotee. He has material desires, and therefore he can be overcome by anger. Lust and anger go together. So then famously, we saw in the 4th canto where he disguised himself as a sannyasi to take the 100th horse from Prithu, right? He would get 100 horse sacrifices. And that was the beginning of the false sannyasis and everything, right? It was a whole pastime with that. Well, so big deal. In other words, Indra has an important role to play because he's taking care of the weather and running the heavenly planets and everything. So he's a devotee. And so when he does something like that, oh, what have I done? And he begs forgiveness. We say, the demons don't do that. But this business of a horse sacrifice, no devotee would ever dream of saying, oh, I got to get a horse and sacrifice it,
Of course, in Kali Yuga it's prohibited.
Prohibited, yeah.
In Kali Yuga it's not allowed.
Yeah, I must say, Maharaj, I don't know the intricacies of what the benefits are of the horse sacrifice. But as far as Indra and them going, getting attracted to others' wife, and Suryadev too.
Indra is understandable. But
Yeah.
about Surya also involved in seducing somebody else's wife. Taking the shape of Gautama, she thought she was.
Yeah. So it's not her fault. She's completely faultless. Yeah. I don't want to speculate.
Although the husband cursed her.
Oh yes.
Sorry. Although Gautama cursed her to become a stone, then Lord Chamchandra delivered her later. That's the. But I mean to say, it's surprising that such great demigods,
Yeah.
to go with a married woman to
Indra doesn't
married to a sage,
Indra doesn't surprise me, but Surya surprises me.
Yeah. I mean, he heard Bhagavad Gita from Krishna.
Yeah. I don't know. I could research it when we go back. I have some access.
Okay.
Find out to do that.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Vijay Krishna, you're on.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. Dandavat Pranams. My question is, if tolerance must be exercised by devotees, why is it that dirty, smelling people are not allowed in the temple room?
Because it's a temple room. We have to keep it pure for the deities, for Krishna, And also there's the question of, okay, I can tolerate and preach to this person, but what about all the other people who come in who are not devotees, who are interested in they'll be repelled by this, In other words, we can. The best thing is to instruct a person, if he's really serious, to go get cleaned up. You know, it used to be, did we ever used to be give them a shower and give them bhakta pants? I think in the old days we used to do that. But because it ruins the atmosphere. We can tolerate so many things, especially out in the street. You know, if you're preaching and you're doing Harinam and so many things happen. But when the temple has to be kept pure. The atmosphere has to be kept pure. And so there have to be restrictions. The old crest test. We should all know the crest test. You know, 4 things.
I know the crest test. Three factors: clean, sober, and humble.
Yes, but also sane has to be there.
Yeah.
Yes, clean, respectful, sane, and sober. And you have to have 4 of them. If you're missing one, you know, even if you're very clean, respectful, and sober, if you're not sane. You know? So those are important. So to come into the temple, what to speak of move into the temple, you have to be very much fixed in those 4 things, you know, and that enables you to, you know, get the benefit.
Thank you, Dravida.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Thank
we
you
have
very
time
much.
for one more. Tyler, go ahead. You have your own mic. Go ahead.
I'm not sure. I think it's philosophical, what I'm trying to ask an answer for, because I think practically I kind of get this. It's the idea of when we're transitioning from detaching from material enjoyment and trying to attach to spiritual bliss. And I'm thinking from the idea of, you know, Arjuna's instructing Krishna that why are we compelled to do sinful activities even though we don't want to? He's saying it's lust.
Yes, 3rd chapter, yeah.
And I'm thinking of when I've been telling people about the philosophy, and I get the responses, "Oh, I could never give up garlic and onions." You know, "Oh, you know, some people, if they don't drink alcohol or do heroin in the morning, their bodies are so, you know, in chaos. They have to use that to feel normalized. So they have these intense attachments, these things that are material. What to speak of trying to give those up to then switch over to the other side and begin practicing spiritual behavior." I was at a Laguna Beach temple where Tukaram was talking about tapasya, and he was talking about like being heat, like it's this heat that we use to kind of...
Tapa means heat, to heat things, yeah.
So that's what I'm interested in, is that point when we know now we're going to turn away from these intense material attachments, like some that we could never even conceive of giving up before, what to speak of certain different lives where we might have been really engrossed in these things.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult then to detach from those. And then there's this period in between where we're kind of like empty and we're like not sure what to do, right? And then we need to do these spiritual practices. That's where people are tempted with relapse. They might be very frustrated. They're not experiencing bliss yet, right? They're still missing this thing that was a big part of them that was ultimately bad for them.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that transition? I get practically chant, be with the devotees, eat prasad.
Well, there's two things going on. One is that the universality of Krishna consciousness of the chanting of the holy name, you know. I mean, if you're drunk and you're chanting, it's auspicious, but you have to come to the point of chanting sober, you know. But just an ordinary person who's got many attachments and is trying to, you know, come to Krishna consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada spent so much time on the philosophy, because it try to strengthen your intelligence. When someone, forget about Krishna consciousness for a minute. If you're just trying to give up some, you know, drug or alcohol or habit or something that's pulling you down, you need to have willpower, and that willpower comes from understanding, and it's not just a feeling. You know, understanding, projecting how this is ruining my life. I'm going to break up my whole family, and, you know, that's an idea. Therefore, I got to, you know, try my best to give this up, and you go into rehab or something. You know what I mean? So this understanding that we're getting from like this passage of the 5th canto, you real all of it. You know, Prabhupada's always giving us the deep meaning. And yes, I'm a spirit soul, and I've come from the spiritual world, and I should really strive to get back there, go back home, back to Godhead. And I find here these devotees are giving me, you know, encouragement, and so you have to pursue that. And at the same time, the chanting has to be there. The chanting of in kirtan, and also to take it home with you and chant whenever you can. You know, chant, because that's Krishna directly attracting you. The very word Krishna means is attracting. and is giving you spiritual happiness. Now in our covered state we can hardly perceive it, but it's working. And if you have both, you have the practice, chanting and doing whatever else you can, associating, hearing the philosophy, and at the same time trying to separate yourself. You know, you don't go and hang out with your old friends who are doing drugs and expect you're going to advance. You have to stick to your association. Then you have a chance of developing the willpower and the strength to pursue Krishna consciousness and gradually give up these attachments. It's difficult. We're so conditioned. But this is the battle. We're on the battlefield. And that's the battle that we're undergoing. And it's great to be amongst devotees who once were, you know, in your position, but we were able to develop and give you confidence it's possible to do it, you know. So that's how it works. It's not, you know, sometimes you're able to do it for some time, but you have, you know, some difficulty at one point. It becomes more difficult. You fall away for some time, but nothing is ever lost. There's never any loss or diminution on this path, even a little advancement on this path. And I'm sorry, we're going to try to get this changed. We'll protect you from the most fearful type of danger. Whenever Prabhupada ever quoted this verse, he never spoke about the most dangerous type of fear. He always spoke about the most fearful type of danger. So that's what the danger is to lose this human form of life. On that auspicious note, Vijay Krishna, are you okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Did we answer your question, more or less?
Oh, completely. Outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much.
Okay. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Om.